Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started.
Well, hello. I am Daniel Jude Miller, children's author and illustrator, and the person behind the book series Monsters in Manhattan. Now, I'm sure that you're aware of all the iconic landmarks in New York City. But did you know that there are also monsters living there? It's true. And today I'm going to introduce you to a couple of them. So let's get started with first, the dragon that lives in Times Square. All the billboards and lights are so flashy and bright. Yep, Times Square is the heart of this town. But below your boot soles, steam curls up from manholes, from a dragon that skulks underground. Right beneath the dark street, underneath cold concrete, is a scrap-eating, grumpy old lizard. For brave knights he once slayed in lands far, far away, banished here by a powerful wizard. Those footsteps of the crowds, New Year's Eve is so loud, and car horns keep him up half the night. All he wants is to sleep, but he can't catch a peep, and he hasn't the strength left to fight. He's covered in grime with a blanket of slime, keeping warm by the flame from his breath. All the tales heroes tell will not mention the smell, which will be the true cause of his death. Kings fell 3 at a time when he was in his prime, and his skills earned him jewels he could stash. Now his best years have passed, and he can't move that fast, but his yawns could still turn you to ash. So now we'll move on to one other monster that's living up in Central Park in the middle of Manhattan Island. And we're going to go to Central Park and we're going to see my mad scientist. As the city grows dark, we can stroll through the park and then relax on a snow-dusted bench. But don't try to make friends with the man on the end. He's the odd Dr. Heinrich von Stench. He comes here every night under fading sunlight to feed squirrels and pigeons and rats. But there's one scary twist. He's a mad scientist. Yo, his brain glows from under his hat. This quiet bench sitter creates huge mutant critters with stale bread that is radioactive. Now don't look so surprised when they grow to full size, from so cute to grossly unattractive. They eat out of his hand, and real soon he'll command a whole army of abnormal pets. Then on that fateful day, this whole city will sway and bow down to his villainous threats. If you doubt his intentions, see his other inventions, which are weirder and doubly insane. At his lab in Brooklyn, he is building a twin. Would you mind if he measured your brain? So those are only 2 of the many, many monsters that are included in all of my Monsters in Manhattan books, and where there are even more to come.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. I am doing a happy dance over here because I love children's author. I dabble in it, but to have an author/illustrator is such a treat. So, hi, Mr. Daniel. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I am so ecstatic you're here. You're talking New York City, which is one of my favorite cities, monsters, the whole 9 yards. So let's just get started. Tell us, where do these books come from? What is these stories? What can we expect? Give us a little insight. What do you have going on?
Well, it's an actual true story of where the whole series came from. I was working a job doing illustration that I really did enjoy. And one day I was going home in Manhattan and They have manholes, the holes they cut in the street that go down in the sewer. And sometimes, like you see on TV, steam will come out of them in the winter. And that made me think that it looked like the smoke from a dragon's breath. And right at that moment, I had an idea that maybe dragons lived underneath the sidewalk of New York City. And from there, I started to build an entire world of all the different monsters, giants and aliens and robots and werewolves and vampires and all the different things that would live at all the incredible New York City tourist attractions and landmarks. There's literally everything in the series, the Brooklyn Bridge, the museums, Yankee Stadium, all sorts of cool stuff.
How many books do you have in this series? Because this is so fascinating.
Right now, there's 2 books are finished and published. The other 2, because I'm both the author and the illustrator, the parts 3 and parts 4 are written, but they don't have the art yet. So hopefully by around the beginning of next year, the 3rd one will come out, and then the 4th one, the end of 2023.
From a person who just writes and doesn't have to draw, how long does it take you to make all the drawings for all of your books?
Well, the funny part is I'm trained as an illustrator first. I went to art school. I never wanted to become an author, believe it or not. I had no interest at all. And it wasn't until I was an adult and I got this idea that I decided I would kind of teach myself how to become an author. So the truth is, it only takes me maybe around 4 to 6 months to write the story, but it takes easily a year to do all the drawings. The drawings are, for any of my books, they're much more difficult to do. I mean, even a single page could take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks just to do one page. The illustration is much more difficult.
Listener, most children's books have about 32 panels. So it's not like you're just doing a page and some words. Like you're literally creating these whole universe put together. And you're doing it out of like real landmarks. So it's not like you can distort something and people are like, that doesn't look like that. How hard was to incorporate that real architecture into this world of yours?
That was actually one of the hardest parts because ultimately, as an illustrator, I'm a character designer. That's the thing I like to do the most. So making monsters, that part was easy. I can do that all day. And then I realized, like you're saying, a lot of the landmarks, they're iconic and they have to look like what they actually look like. And I'm not big on drawing buildings. That's not one of my favorite things to do, which is probably not wise then to pick New York City as your location. But I pulled it off. I could tell you 2 of the hardest illustrations for me to do were there's Rockefeller Center. There's a giant that lives in Rockefeller Center and steals the star off the top of the giant tree so that he can make giant earrings for his giant wife. And I needed to draw the Rockefeller Center building, and it's very complicated. That one was difficult, and Times Square, because Times Square has so many billboards and signs and all of that stuff. Luckily, I have reference, so photos are very, very helpful.
That's probably the blessing right there, like you said, is the fact that you can always go back and look at it. It's like, okay, what is that moment in time that you want to create and capture that? But you have taken on this incredible fun project of capturing what everybody sees every day. Because a lot of people have toured, have seen it, they've seen the pictures, and then play with the imagination, which is beautiful. What is the age range you're aiming for?
The monsters books that we just were speaking about here, those, believe it or not, because like I just read, they're relatively complicated and the vocabulary is intentionally a little more complex. So I was shooting for, when I wrote them, I would say probably 3rd to almost 5th grade. But I do a lot of author visits. So that's my main focus, is going to schools and meeting with kids. I try to steer them towards my younger books because I have a few other younger books. But the kids, even in kindergarten, they love the monster books. And even though the vocabulary is beyond what they can read, who can turn away a monster book? The illustrations alone make them want to read it. So believe it or not, I've had a big audience all the way from K to above, because also my illustrations are so detailed. I've had older students who obviously children's books are not their thing, but the art alone is enough to pull them in and make them want to take a look.
It's almost like a cycle. Like you want them when they're young and the kids want to read them on their own. But then you have lots of parents and grandparents buying them because they're the ones reading them. Somebody has to read these babies to the little ones. So I find that to be such a fun combination. You do authors visits. How do you prepare for something like that? Tell us about it.
I'm also self-published, so I'm handling the publishing side of this too. And when I started, I made a bunch of books and invested in a huge amount of money and thought I would go on Amazon and be rich instantly. And that's not the case. For anyone watching or listening, it does not work like that. And I met someone at a book show, my first book show, and they said, "Do you do author visits?" And I had said, "Author what?" And they said, "Come and visit with me and I'll show you how we do it." And this person took me on one of their visits and I was washing and I thought, there's no way that I can do this, right? It was a room of 600 second graders. And I thought, I can't do this. And right at the moment where I was prepared to give up on this career, the person turns to me and says, "I brought a guest. I want to bring him up on stage," which was the last thing that I was prepared for. I wanted to do. I always tell students, I went up there and my hand was shaking. And like, I took like two questions and then wanted to get out of there. And then I drove home and I said to my wife, I said, "Forget it. This is not for me, the author visits." And she said, "Well, it better be for you because we have a lot of money invested in this business." So I took like 3 months and built up a program and all sorts of cool things about how I create the book. Since I do all the parts, I realized I had all the pieces to share with students how I do it. And when I went and did my first author visit, they handed me the microphone and my hand was completely still. It turned out that my real calling, I mean, I love writing and I love drawing, but my real calling was meeting with students and sharing what I do and hopefully getting them on the same path that I'm on.
So your career has taken such an amazing turn because now you are a writer, illustrator, publisher, but now you're a motivational speaker.
Mm.
Because going to school is such an integral part, and people are looking to figure it out. Can I make a living out of this? Can I do this? Because let's be honest, every child loves to draw, every child loves to write. And how many parents have told their kids, "You better get a real job"? So to see you doing it, what's the reaction of the students when you go talk to them?
They love it. I mean, there's two kinds of schools out there. There's schools that do altar visits every year, and those students are very, very lucky because they're getting up every single year, a different person that comes in and shows them. Then there are other schools that can't afford it for the budget reasons or something, and they get somebody very, very rarely. Those are even more important because I may be the only person that they see in their entire academic career. And I mean, they're sort of blown away. I mean, my program, like it has parts about writing, it has parts about drawing, it has parts about publishing, and it shows them that back when I was in second grade, it was impossible to make your own book. It wasn't a thing you could do. Now, I've met students that were published and were selling on Amazon, and believe it or not, they were in the first and second grade. So when I share that with a lot of students, especially in more rural areas where they think that it's inaccessible to become someone creative, the truth is, with the technology we're using right now, it has opened up doors for these students that I wish I had when I was their age. And I just want to show them that doors exist and then encourage them to go through them.
That is so powerful. It's just so beautiful. Like it gives me goosebumps to know that kids can start thinking so outside the box and be able to create their own future, regardless of where they're coming from. So it's truly amazing. So you drop a little hint that you have other books besides your monster series. What are they? You have a younger audience. Tell us a little bit about that.
So there's two other books that I take when I go out to schools. There's one called Everybody Wake Up, and that's about a little girl that loves being awake. And she loves being awake so much that if she sees anyone sleeping during the day, she'll sneak up behind them and she'll take a deep breath and she'll literally yell, "Everybody wake up," right in their face. And it works every single time. She does it to the dog and she does it to the baby and her parents and everyone. And then the other book that is real special to me is a book called Halloween Boy and the Christmas Kid. And the reason it's so special is because it's 100% true. My son and his best friend were born on the same day and in the same hospital, but we didn't actually know the family at the time. And then they met when they were in kindergarten and they found out they had the same birthday. They became best friends, but that is the only thing they have in common. Okay. My son loves Halloween more than anyone on this planet. I really believe that. His room right now is decorated. He has 6 life-size clowns in his room that he sleeps with every single night. There are spiders on the ceiling. There are ghosts on the wall. There's a little graveyard he actually built in there. And he has loved Halloween since he was very little. But his best friend, and this is all true, his best friend does not like Halloween at all. He's obsessed with Christmas. And he used to keep a Christmas tree in his room 12 months out of the year, fully lit and with presents underneath it. So that book was fun to work on because it was about 2 real boys that are in my life. And those boys have not changed. They're 14 now and they're totally the same.
How do they feel that they know that they're the inspiration for your works? How does that work?
It's funny. When I was doing it, they were younger. When I started the book, they didn't know about it. And I wasn't sure how my son would react or his friends because they're both relatively shy. And then the book sort of debuted at an author visit at their school with them in the audience. And I wasn't sure if this was the smartest thing to do. But it turned out actually they both loved it and they actually sort of loved the notoriety, like that they kind of became popular around school because all the kids in the school bought the book and then knew the two of them and they got kind of popular from it. So it all worked out.
That's a really good story because that could have had a really bad ending.
Yeah.
And some very traumatized little boys because of you. So
Mhm.
I'm so happy it worked out. Daniel, tell us, besides your monster series, what else are you working on?
Well, it's a funny thing. I have a whole bunch of picture books that are still halfway in progress. I have one about a Christmas tree, one about a mouse, a whole bunch of stuff. And then, like, it was interesting because I actually had a dream. I never get ideas like for books from dreams, but I had a dream and it was a relatively decent idea. I went to an author visit and we were having lunch with, sometimes they'll give students a prize and certain ones get to eat lunch with me. And it usually works really, really well. But this day it wasn't working. It was about 7 students and they were real nervous. And I was trying to like loosen them up and break the ice, but nothing was working. And then I said, well, I had this dream last night and I told them the dream and that it would probably make for a good book. And the more I was talking about that book, the more they were getting excited and they were opening up finally. So I kept going with it and telling them some ideas for this book that I kind of wrote on the way to the author visit. The problem was it wasn't a picture book. This was going to be a middle grade novel. It was a complex story. It wasn't meant to have any pictures. And suddenly the excitement that they show like towards this story convinced me that I was going to try to become an author of larger format books. I actually started writing more chapters and pages. And the next thing you know, I had written an entire 300-page, 50-chapter middle grade novel. It's called The Final Five. It's about a boy that loves his cell phone and he loves his cell phone so much that he like literally never puts it down. And one day when he goes to the mall, he sees what's called the Virtual Pod 9000. And it's not like those virtual glasses. It's actually a machine you get inside and it closes around you and then they project what you want to see. And you could be on the moon, you could be at the bottom of the ocean. There's only one rule about the Virtual Pod 9000, and that's that no cell phones are allowed inside. Now, of course, he's not going to listen to that. He sneaks his phone in. And right when the machine's powering up, he sends a text and it causes the machine to malfunction. So instead of him seeing the bottom of the ocean, the machine actually sends him back in time to the year 1955. And so his body has been transported back in time. His phone has come with him and it still works and he's able to call the present. Problem is, there's one thing that did not travel back with him that he desperately needs. It's the charger. And so his phone is quickly dying and he knows it's the key to get him back to his own time, but his battery is quickly fading away and he has to figure out a way to get his phone charged to return to his normal life. So that book is finished and it's actually supposed to come out on May 1st. And so we're very excited about that. No pictures in that one, all words, but it's a new adventure for me.
Oh, that is so exciting. I am so thrilled to hear that the students were connecting with it. It's such a story that is so generational focused because I know enough kids that I don't know if they can survive if you take their phone. I'm pretty sure they would die. I think the universe would fall apart and they will probably crumble if they have no phones. They don't know what to do. So that is such an appropriate thing. It's so much fun. I'm so happy that you decided to follow that dream theory because I'm with you. I don't get booked ideas from dreams. I'm like, that's amazing.
It's rare. I always tell students most of the time I get ideas from things I see, like things that happen or people that I know. I'm an active dreamer, but they're usually too strange to turn into a book. But I literally dreamt that I was walking down the street and I was on my cell and I looked up. And when I looked up, I noticed that the cars were different and the people were dressed different. And I realized I was in the 50s. And then I panicked because I didn't want them to see the phone because they wouldn't know what that is. And I hid it. And I woke up and that was the dream of being possibly back in time with a cell phone. And from there with the students, because if it wasn't for those students, when I talk to students all the time about challenging yourself and continually growing, and I tell them it's something I try to do myself too. I took a chance and I always tell them, look, if it didn't work, I would have just erased it off my computer and said it didn't really work. I don't think that's the format for me. But it turned out when I started writing, it did work. I ended up writing that book. And now actually there's two more novels that I'm working on, because once you start something, you learn certain skills and you start getting better at it. So if it wasn't for them, if they were more outgoing that day, it wouldn't have forced me to kind of try to break the ice with something, and the book may never exist. So I owe a lot to them.
You're looking at all those things come into play, have different areas that you're working on. Which one is your favorite? Do you have one?
Well, that's a good question. I'm lucky because I have so many different things to do. The reason I say I'm lucky is, as you know, right? If you're writing, there are times it's not working. In fact, I always tell students there's more times it's not working than usually times that it is. The good part for me is when it stops working, I have other things I can do. I don't have to harp on it. I can give myself a break. So usually what I'll do is if I get stuck writing, then I'll switch to drawing. And then when you get stuck drawing, which also happens, I'll switch to more of the publishing side and things I need to do, because I also do my own website. I do my own everything. And then I'll switch to something else. I'm working on a game project. So luckily for me, since I have my hand in a lot of different things, I wouldn't say any of them are my favorite, because I really do truly love every part of everything that I get to do. I said I'm lucky because it allows me to break away and maybe take a break and focus on something different and then come back to it. Whereas if you're not doing all the parts, then sometimes you got to just fight through. Luckily, I don't have to do that. I can usually take a break, and then usually it comes to you once you take a month off and you draw for a month and then, go back to writing. And I have a lot of work to do, but luckily it's all different work.
It's fun to hear the fact that you enjoy it all,
Mm.
because sometimes writers, illustrators have a favorite piece and don't like the business side as much. The fact that you're doing your own website, I'm like, oh, look at you. Oh, sure, so busy. That is amazing and so much fun. For one of your students or a brand new author, what advice would you give them?
I met with a class just this week, and we were talking a lot about all of books and making books and everything like that. I like to try to make my presentations more than just books, because the truth is not every student that I'm speaking with wants to become a writer, and not everyone even likes to draw. I try to bring to them that it's the idea of things. Okay. It's then they don't necessarily need to become an author or an artist. And my favorite question that I've ever gotten out of school was a student asked me, did I ever doubt myself? And I know for a fact that she thought I was going to say, no way, because I'm amazing. So why would I ever do that? I'm positive she believed that was going to be the response. It wouldn't have been the truth. And I told her that I doubt myself literally on every single drawing, not even every book, every single page of every drawing. It's a natural process where you get a lot of creative energy, and then you start working on it. And then at some point, you always hit like a creative wall. I think it's important for anyone, but especially students, to know that the difference between the people that succeed and the people that don't is not that the people that succeeded never got stumped, that they never got writer's block. It's that they pushed past it. And so one of the things I try to always work on with students is that the key to finishing anything, or the key to being successful, is number one, practice, because the more you're practicing, the better you're getting at things, but also patience. Okay. Things take a long time to do. I love when I meet younger students and they say, I could write a book in a weekend. And I'm like, probably not, because I want them to understand that it's a process of writing it over and over, and it gets better, and you want to keep going back to it and improving it. And you don't want to rush, because there is no rush, first of all. But second of all, the more patient you are with it, the better it's going to get. If I had any advice for students, no matter what they're doing, books or not, is that the more you're practicing, the better you'll get. And also understand that it's a process, that a very big part of that process is being patient with yourself.
Love it. Most people want immediate gratifications and they want these books to be here, magically done and ready to go. But the fact to be patient with yourself and give yourself the grace to try it and just
Mm.
keep getting better is so beautiful, especially at that age, because they're looking at adults and like, well, you don't understand because you have everything put together. None of us ever were kids. Like, ah,
What's funny is they always ask me like a big question, when did I start drawing? And the truth is I've been drawing since like 5 years old. That was my main thing. And I never wanted to be a writer. I really didn't. When I was younger, I went to Catholic school. So writing classes were even a thing. So I never really wrote, and I had no problem with that. I always tell them I was 25 when I started writing. I had graduated from art school. I had done tens of thousands of drawings and I planned on being an illustrator. And then lo and behold, I saw that smoke coming out of the street. I had an idea for a story and I considered letting someone else write it and then I would illustrate it and we put it together. And I just decided it was worth a shot. I would try to teach myself how to write. I decided to make it even more complicated by making it written in rhyme, which makes it even harder to do. But it was worth it to try to push myself, learn something, and then put together my own book. So no, it doesn't come overnight. Here's the fun fact. It took 10 years for me to finish that first book. I was still working illustration jobs and learning how to write and putting it together. Luckily, the second book only took 2 years. And like I said, now it takes about a year per book. So again, the patience and practice makes improvement.
It is all about being consistent and keep doing it. So you are such an amazing example of that. Tell us, Daniel, where can our listeners find you, where they can find these books, where they can learn more about you?
It is so easy to find me. I am Daniel Jude Miller everywhere on Twitter and on Facebook and on everything. But the easiest way to find the books is through the website, which is definitely worth checking out because the website, like I said, I did it myself, but I'm very serious about making sure that kids they don't have to buy the books. They can go and just go to the website and there's tons of fun things to do. There are games, there are videos, there are all sorts of things. There's a map that shows you where all the monsters live in Manhattan and it's all free and it's all fun. And there's things that they can do and they can send me. And then I put it up on my website and it's easy to find because it's the same as the name of the main book. It's monstersinmanhattan.com. If you go there, there are literally pages and pages and pages of really, really cool things for all ages of kids.
I love the title. I love the fact that you have all this information for kids because sometimes parents, especially if they're busy, what do I do? How do I get them to translate from this book to a little bit more of that obsession and get them excited about it? So you have covered all the bases. So I am super, super excited. We could talk to you all day and I know you got tons of stuff to do. So before you go, are you ready for a lightning round?
Sure.
Easy peasy. Don't think too hard on this. Let's see how you do. Cold drinks or hot drinks?
Cold drinks.
Okay. If you can pick between a prince or a knight, what will you be?
I would be a prince. A knight sounds like a lot of work.
I'm with you. I think you're absolutely right. Here's working well. Comedy or drama?
Oh, definitely comedy. I love comedy.
Nice. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Truthfully, I hate to say this, but the answer is really neither. I've never been a big fan of either, but if I had to pick, I'm slightly more interested in Star Wars.
That is not a bad thing at all. So here's a little different. Let's see what you have for this one. If your life had a warning label, what would it be?
My life had a warning label. Truthfully, it would be exactly what we just talked about because I am a victim of impatience. And that's why I think I preach it so much. And most of my career started later. So if my life had a warning label, it would say something like, do not open until probably somewhere in the future. Okay. Because I think the future is definitely bright. I have a lot of things planned, but sometimes I get anxious and I got to remind myself that it'll come. Just be patient.
I like that. It is a good advice for yourself as well as the other person. Awesome. Darlene, do you have any closing remarks for us?
No, I do not. I had a great time here today. Like you said, we could talk all day. I love talking books. I'll talk to anybody about them. And it was a pleasure to be with you.
It was so much fun. I am such a fan of children's book authors and illustrator. You are the complete package. So congratulations. Congratulations on all this amazing books. To our listeners, make sure you check Mr. Daniel. Check out this amazing website. If you have little ones, you're definitely going to enjoy it. And make sure you give us a like, review the podcast, have others join us. Remember, we'll be back next week for another amazing author. And we are turning 100 episode next week, so you don't want to miss it. Until then, have an amazing day, everyone. Bye.